This video is sponsored by the Ultimate Freelancing Bundle by StudyWebDevelopment.com, which gives you everything you need to start your own freelancing business, including a 130-page in-depth guide, invoicing and client proposal templates, website templates, an SEO checklist, and much more. Visit the link in the description and use the code BRAD25 to get 25% off. Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this video, I want to take a look at the WordPress Rest API. So what's really cool about this is you can use WordPress as a content management system, and this is especially good for clients, especially if you're freelancing and so on, because they can add their own content. However, you can still use a single page application on the front end with React or Vue or Angular and just connect to the REST API. And you can access all the resources that WordPress offers. You can use custom post types, which I'll show you how to do using a plugin. As far as authentication, there's multiple methods. What I'm going to show you is a plugin called JWT REST API. It allows us to use JWT, which is JSON Web Tokens, in order to get a token to authenticate to be able to add a post or whatever, add content. So I'll show you how to do all that through Postman, which is an HTTP client. And as far as React, we'll just set up a quick React application on the front end and just kind of interact with it a little bit, fetch some data. I'm not going to get into authentication in the React app itself because it'll just take too long. I'll have to use Redux and so on. But if you watched my Django and React series where we did implement front-end authentication, it's pretty much the same thing. You just store the token, and then when you make a request, you send that token along with it in the headers. All right, so we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But this is the documentation for the REST API, and just kind of gives you some information, shows you the endpoints, what the requests and response look like. Basically, you go to whatever your WordPress URL is, /wp-json, and that will give you all of the available endpoints. And if we go to reference here, you'll see all the different resources that this allows us to get and work with. So posts, categories, pages, users, media, all this stuff is available. And we can also use custom post types using a plugin, which I'll show you. So obviously, we need to have a WordPress installation. So if you want to use XAMPP or WAMP or something like that, that's fine. If you want to use a remote WordPress installation, that's fine. We're going to use Docker. And I actually made a video about 2 weeks ago creating this Docker Compose file, which will set up MySQL, PHPMyAdmin, and WordPress with Apache all in containers in one simple command. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So if you want to follow along, just make sure you have Docker installed on your system. And then we're going to grab this and jump into VS Code. I'm going to create a new file. This is just an empty folder. And let's call this docker-compose.yaml. And I'm going to paste this in. Make sure that this is all indented correctly. Okay, so once we have that saved, you can just simply run docker-compose up detached. And that's going to set up the MySQL database, PHPMyAdmin, and WordPress. And it's going to bring all the files in over here, as you can see. And you just want to wait a couple seconds for all the files to show up before you go to localhost 8000. Because as you can see, for our WordPress service, it's basically mapping port 80 within the container to 8000 on our system. And you could change this if you want. All right, so let's try it out. We'll go to localhost port 8000, and we should be able to now install WordPress. Okay, so site title, I'm just going to call this book reviews, because I'm going to show you how to add a custom post type of books rather than just using posts. So username, say Brad, simple password, and install. So we'll go ahead and log in. And it's as easy as that to get WordPress set up. And of course, we do have our standard WordPress front-end template, and there's different ways to handle this. You could just put a header function and just redirect. If someone tries to come here, just redirect to your front-end application. We'll probably do that later. So now what I want to do is experiment with the REST API. So if I open up Postman and I make a GET request to HTTP localhost 8000, which is where our WordPress site lives, and go to /wp-json. If I do this right off the bat, it gives me a 404 error. Now to fix this, we just go to settings and then permalinks, and we just need to change the setting. So I'm going to go from plain to post name in common settings and then save. And now if we go back to Postman and make that same request, now it works. Okay, so when I first got started with this, that took me a little bit to figure out. So this gives us like obviously the application name, the description, all that stuff, and it also gives us all the endpoints. So basically, if we want to use any of the resources, we go to /wp/v2 and then whatever resource we want, like posts. So let's do that. Let's go to wp-json/wp/version2/posts. So what this gives us is an array of all of our WordPress posts, which by default we only have this one, this hello world. But it gives us all different fields like the ID, the date, the slug, status, type, and then we have a title object with a rendered property that has the title, content, and then excerpt, and you can see the HTML is actually included in here. Now, as far as like the author, the featured media, which would be the featured image, it just gives us the ID. So within like our React or Vue application, we'd have to make another request to get, let's say, the author name. So we'd have to go to /users/ and then that ID. So let's say /1, and you can see that gives us the author or the user's information. Okay, so as far as like adding a post or doing anything like that where you're editing data in WordPress, then you're going to have to authenticate. So just to give you an example, if I go to post and I go to v2/posts, and let's try to add a post. So in our headers, we need to add a content type, and we're going to set that to application/JSON, and then in the body we'll go to raw and we'll just add our JSON. So let's say we want to add title, and we'll say post 1, and then content, say this is post 1, and then status, because if we don't put a status here, it'll be draft by default. We want it to be published. So let's say publish. Okay, now if I try to send this, what we get is a 401, which is an unauthorized. So this means it says, sorry, you are not allowed to create posts as this user. Basically, we don't have a user. Now, like I said, there's different ways to authenticate. If you're using the REST API, I would suggest using JSON Web Tokens. So basically, you just need to log in through an endpoint and then take the token that's given to you and add that to the headers. Now, this isn't functionality by default, so we just have to add in a plugin. So I'm going to go to plugins, add new, and we're going to search for JWT. And this right here, JWT authentication for WordPress REST API. We want to install that and click activate. Okay, and then I'm just going to open the documentation here, this view details. I'm just going to open that in a new tab because there is a little bit of configuration. We do have to add a couple lines to our htaccess file. So I'm going to grab the second two because we already have the rewrite engine on. So I'm going to copy that and then go into the htaccess file for WordPress. And I'm going to put this right here. And let's see, let's go back and grab this line and put that in as well. Okay, so we want those three lines in our htaccess. I'm going to save that, close it up. Now we want to go into our WP config file, and I'm going to go down here, and we need to put our secret key, and we need to enable cores. So let's go back to that page right there, and we'll grab the secret key. Okay, so we just want to define, and you could use anything here. I'll just say secret. And then for cores, Go ahead and grab this define and put that right under it. All right, so let's save that. Now we should be all set to hit the endpoint to get a token, which, as you can see right here, it's going to be WP-JSON JWT auth version 1 token and a post request. So I'm going to grab that, and let's go back to Postman. I'm going to open up a new tab here, make a post request to HTTP localhost port 8000, and then paste that in. Should be slash. Now for this, we need to send along content type of application/JSON, and then in the body we want to log in. Okay, so this could be any WordPress login. So let's put a username, which mine is Brad, and password 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's see what happens if it's wrong. Okay, so if it's wrong, it just says incorrect password. Let's change it to be correct and send, and now we get a token back, okay, as well as the email and display name. So now we need to just take this token, so we'll copy that, and we need to go to where we tried to create a post earlier and just add a header value of authorization. And in order for this to work, we need to put in the word bearer, because it's a bearer token, so bearer space and then paste in the token. Okay, once we do that, we send. Now it added a post. Okay, if we want to add another one, let's do post 2, send that. And now if we go back to our WordPress content management system here, if we go to posts, you can see we now have post 1 and post 2. All right, so I mean, if you guys have used JWT with React or Vue or Angular before, it's going to work the same way. Okay, and like I said, I'm not going to implement that because it takes too long to set up. If you watched my React and Django series that I just did, it's pretty much you implement the front end pretty much the same way. We used Redux, we stored the token in local storage, we had an auth reducer with a value of is authenticated, and we just checked to see if that token was authenticated. Okay, so that's pretty much the workflow you want. Now, what if we want custom types? Like we don't want posts, let's say we want books. Okay, so there's multiple plugins for WordPress, obviously. I'm going to install one. Let's say add new, and I'm going to search for custom post types UI. Okay, so this right here, custom post type UI. Let's install that. Okay, so that's installed. We'll activate it. And let's go to over here now. You have this add edit post types. So I'm going to create one called books. As you can see, I've already done this. Plural is going to be books, singular is book, and then down here where it says show in REST API, make sure that's true. And then for the slug, we're going to say books. And then down here, I'm going to say we also want the excerpt to be available as well as the author. All right, so we can do that, and we'll say add post type. Good. So now, right here, you can see there's a menu item for books. And if I click add new, let's say book 1. For the content, I'm just going to grab some dummy text at lipsum.com. And we'll just grab a couple paragraphs here. Paste that in. We'll grab like the first line here, first sentence, and put that as an excerpt over here. We'll set a featured image. So I actually have some just dummy mock-ups here. We'll use that. All right, so we'll go ahead and publish and publish. Okay, and let's create one more. So we'll add another book. Say book 2. Let me just we'll grab the second 2 paragraphs. And then we want an excerpt. featured image. You can grab any image you want. All right, so publish. So now we have 2 books. Now, if we go to Postman, we should be able to say /books. Actually, no, we don't want to make a post request. Let's just go to a new tab. So / go host 8000 /wp-json /wp/version2/books. And now we can fetch our books. And another thing, there are parameters we can add, like let's say we wanted to limit it to a certain amount per page. We could add per_page, and let's set that to 1. So now if I send that, it'll just get the 1. So it's an array of 1. Now if I wanted just the certain book, like this one has an ID of 9, I could say books/9, and that will give me that single object. All right, now what if we want to add a custom field, like something else besides this stuff, like maybe publisher or something like that? So in order to do that, we could install a couple extra plugins. So if we go to plugins, add new, we want to search for advanced custom fields. And it is this one right here, this first one. So we'll install that. Okay, we'll activate it. Now, by default, we'll be able to add custom fields. We're going to set that up in a second. However, they're not going to be visible to the REST API. So to do that, we need one more plugin, and that's called ACF to REST API. Okay, so advanced custom fields to REST API. Whoops, what am I doing? We need to go to add new and search for that. ACF to REST API. It's going to be this one right here. All right, we'll activate it. Okay, so now let's go over to custom fields, and let's say add new. And this is going to be the group, so I'll just call this books. And let's make sure this only pertains to books. And then we'll add a field. So let's just say publisher. Okay, it'll add the field name here automatically. The type is text, although you have a bunch of different types you can use here. And I'm just going to leave the rest as default. Okay, so that should be good. Let's say publish. Okay. Now, if we go back to books, and let's go to book 1, and down at the bottom, you'll see we have publisher. So let's say, I don't know, ABC Publishing. And we'll go ahead and update that. And let's go to book 2, and we'll say 1, 2, 3 Publishing. Update. Now let's go back to Postman and see if that shows up. So we're going to make a request to books/9, which is book 2. So we'll send that again. And now we should have published available. Publisher, sorry. So right here, and you can see it's actually in this object called ACF. Okay, so advanced custom fields. So in your application, you would just simply query this object. Okay, and then any field inside there that you wanted. And of course, there's other plugins, there's other ways to do it, but I think this is a pretty simple way. So I think now I just want to jump into React and just kind of mess with this a little bit, this API. Like I said, I think I said, this isn't going to be like some fantastic application or anything. It's just to kind of get you guys familiar with it, maybe give you some ideas, get the gear spinning in your head so you can start to create some stuff using this if you're interested. So let's jump into VS Code. And I'll clear this up. And I'm going to use create React app to create our React application, but I'm going to use npx instead of installing it globally with npm. So we'll just do npx create -react -app, and let's put this in a folder called front end. So that will just generate a boilerplate project and put it in a folder called front end. And you can structure your application however you want. And I'm choosing to use React, but of course you could use Vue or Angular or whatever you'd like. Okay, so now let's CD into front end. And I'm just going to install two things. I want to install Axios to make our requests. If you want to use the Fetch API, that's fine as well. And then also React Router DOM, because I'd like to have a list of our book reviews and then be able to click a button and go to that single review page or that book page. And it's going to be very simple. I'm not going to use any styling or anything like that. The goal isn't to build an awesome application. It's just to give you an idea of how to work with the API. All right, so that's all set. Now I'm going to just run the Create React App server. So npm start, make sure you're in your front end folder. And that will open it up on port 3000. Close these other tabs here. All right, so now we just have our landing page, and I'm actually going to make this smaller so that we have both on the same screen here. All right, so let's do I'm just going to do my standard cleanup for Create React App. So in the source folder, I'm going to delete the app test file, index CSS, logo, and the service worker. So we'll delete all of those. And let's go into index.js, get rid of the import for the index CSS, get rid of the service worker import and the register method down here. Save that, go to app.js, get rid of the logo, and just have a div. The render should just be a div, and we'll just put an H1 in here, and we'll just say app. All right, and then let's go into app CSS, and let's clear all that stuff out as well. Okay, I'm not going to have any styling whatsoever. All right, so let's go ahead and create a components folder. And let's say components. And inside here, let's create a file called books.js. Okay, so this is going to be the books component. This is where I want to make the initial request to our API. Now I'm going to add inside our package.json file, which is right here, I'm going to add a proxy for localhost 8000 just so we don't have to specify that for every request. So let's say proxy, and let's set that to HTTP localhost port 8000. Okay, so we'll save that. That way we don't have to include that in our request. So inside books, I'm going to generate a class-based component, and I'm using an extension for VS Code called, right here, it's ES7 React Redux GraphQL snippets. So using that extension, I can just do RCE and hit enter or tab, and it'll give me a class. All right, now as far as the state, I'm going to put in books, which will be an array, and then let's do an is loaded, and we'll set that to false. So the idea is this is false until we make our request and get our books, and then it'll be true. We'll set it to true. Okay, let's bring in Axios, and inside our class, let's create component didMount, which is a lifecycle method, and this is where we want to make our initial request. So let's say Axios, it's going to be a GET request. This will give us a promise, and then we'll handle an error with catch. Okay, so the URL that we want to make the request to is going to be /wp-json, not AP, WP. And since we added the proxy, we don't have to put localhost 8000. And then it's /wp/version2/ and we're getting books. Okay, and of course you could create whatever resource you want. You could deal with the standard WordPress posts, pages, users, anything at all that is available with the REST API. So for the catch, let's just do a console log. I'm not going to do anything special here. We'll just log the error. And then inside then, we're going to get the response, and then let's set the state. So this dot set state, put in our state object, and the books we're going to set to the data that comes back, and then let's set the is loaded to true. Okay, so that should make the request. Now, just to make sure, let's actually go in our render and let's console log this dot state. And we'll save that. We'll go to app.js. We'll bring in our component. So import books from ./component/books. And let's replace this h1 with books. Okay, so we'll save that. This should be uppercase. Okay, so if I open up my console here, oh, you know what? When we create a proxy in the package.json, you have to restart your server. That's why it's saying it's a 404. So let's just go ahead and restart that. All right, and as soon as it does that, it should work. There we go. So now you can see that we're getting our books. Now, first we get an empty array because it hasn't been fetched yet. So notice right here it says is loaded false. And then the second one, you can see that we actually get the data and is loaded is now true. So inside of our books component, let's get rid of this. We don't need that. And let's pull some stuff from the state. So we'll use destructuring and we'll pull out books and is loaded. We'll pull those values out from this dot state. Okay, and then we're going to check to see if loaded. So if is loaded, then let's we'll move this return up. So what do we want to return here? We want to basically loop through the books. We want to create a list. So we're going to take the or let's return a div, and let's take the books and let's map through those. So books map, and for each one we'll call it book, and for each one let's just return for right now just an h4, and we'll put in the book. Now remember, it has a title, but that title is an object that has a rendered property. Okay, remember we saw that within Postman. And then let's see, down here under this if loaded, let's just return an h3, and we'll just say loading. And you could put a spinner if you want it to look fancy, but again, I don't care about the styling for this at all. So let's save that. And as you can see, for a second it's loading until it gets the data, and then it's showing us book 1 and book 2, which are the title. And we're getting this warning just because we don't have a key on this list. But what I want to do is, instead of an h4, I want this to be a whole new component called book item. So let's actually create a new file in components called bookitem.js. And before we add anything here, I'm going to bring it into books. So we'll go right here and import book item from ./bookitem. And instead of loading an h4, we're going to load book item. And we're going to pass in, let's see, we're not going to do this. We're going to pass in as a prop book, and we're going to set that to book. Actually, I don't know why I just did that. We want that. Okay, and then it's going to complain about a key like it is here, so we need a unique key passed in. So let's set the key to the ID, the book ID. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. Of course, we're going to get an error because there's nothing in book item. So I'm going to generate a class-based component here, and let's go down to the div. And we're going to load, let's see, let's return a div with an h2, and let's put the title in here, and I'm going to pull the title out of the props. So let's do const, let's pull title, And remember, that's from this.props.book, because that's what we passed in. We passed in book. And title is still an object with rendered, so we just need to put in here title.rendered. Oops, I can't spell. So let's save that. All right, so now each title is showing from this book item component. Now, we do have access to the excerpt, so let's put that underneath. And I just want to show you something. If I do like, let's say a div, and I put in here, let's pull out excerpt. And let's say I do excerpt.rendered. And if I save that, it shows the excerpt, but it also shows the HTML that's there. And obviously that's not what we want. So we need to use an attribute called dangerously set inner HTML, which will allow us to actually parse this HTML. So instead of putting this directly in the div, I'm going to add to the div an attribute of dangerously set inner HTML. Set that to a set of double curly braces. We want double underscore HTML, and then we put in the excerpt, excerpt.rendered. Okay, so if we save that, now you see that the paragraph tags are gone. All right, now I'd like to also have the image as well as the author. And remember, those don't, it doesn't just give us the image URL, it gives us an ID. Same thing with the author. So we have to actually make a couple other requests to get the featured image and the author. So in that case, let's go ahead and bring in Axios. So I'm going to bring that in from Axios. Also, we passed in book as a prop, so we should probably add in our prop types. Okay, so within the class, let's do static prop types, set that to an object, and we have a prop of book, and that is going to be an object, or is an object, and let's say is required. Okay, now we want to make our request in component did mount. Now I want to make two requests. One is going to be to get the image, so it's going to be our WordPress API /media/ and then the featured media. In fact, just to make this a little more clear, let's take a look at what a book looks like. So this is fetching a single book, and we have, let's see, where is it? Yeah, right here, author 1, and then featured media is 10. So it's just giving us the IDs. So we can fetch, for instance, the media by making a GET request to /media/10. If I do that, it gives us a whole bunch of stuff that has to do with the image. So it gives us this, gives us different sizes, so media details. So under sizes, I want to get the full size and then the source URL. So quite a bit of digging to get to what we want, but we can do it. So the way I'm going to do it, since we have two requests, is I'm going to use promise.all, because Axios returns a promise, and I'm not going to do nested thens. I want to do this in a more, I guess, readable syntax. So let's do const get image URL. Set that to the Axios request, which is going to be a GET request. And then in here, I'm going to put in backticks, because I want to put a variable in, and it's going to be /wp-json/wp/v2/media, and then we want the ID. Now the ID, we're going to pull, let's pull that from the props. So let's say const, and it's called featured media. So featured underscore media. And we're also going to want the author. And let's pull that from this.props.book. Okay. And then we'll pass that in as a variable. So featured media, like that. So that's our first request. Now the second one I'm going to put, which is to get the author. So let's do equals axios.get, and we want to pass in /wp-json, and it's going to be wp/version2 / and now we want users, okay, and that these should actually be backticks. Let's change those because we want to put a variable in here. All right, so users / and then the author. So let's put in author. Okay, now we have both of our requests, and we can use promise.all. Okay, so whoops. So instead of adding separate thens on these requests, we're just putting it in this promise.all. We're going to add an array of with these variables. So get image URL and get author. Okay, and then this will give us a promise. So we'll say .then, and this will have the data for both inside of an array. So let's say for the result, we're going to then set state. So this dot set state, and let's set the image. Actually, I didn't even add the state yet. So let's go up here, and let's say we want in our state image URL. We also want the author, and then let's also do an is loaded as false. Okay, and then once we get this stuff here, we're going to set the image URL, and this is going to give us, this result is going to be basically an array, and the first, actually let me just show you what this gives us, just for those of you that haven't used promise.all. So let's do a console log of result. All right, so as you can see, we get, let's open this up, we get an array with two objects. The first one, if we look in data, is going to give us the image. Okay, so it has media details, sizes, full, and then source URL. So basically that's what we want to target. And then the second one is the author. So if we look in data, we want, what do we want here? Just the name. All right, so that's what we're targeting. So let's go back here. I'm actually going to make this a little smaller. And let's uncomment this. Okay, so image URL we're going to set to res, and we want the first object here, and we want from data, media, details, and then let's go into sizes, and then full, and then we want the source underscore URL. Okay, that'll give us the image URL. Next, for the author, we want res1, and then we want from the data, we want the name. We're going to put that in author, and then we also want to just set is loaded to true. Okay, so now down here in the render, let's see, we get the title, the excerpt. Let's get from the state. Let's pull out the author, the image URL, and the is loaded. So that's from this dot state. And then we want to check to see if it's loaded, if it's been fetched. So if is loaded, then in that case, let's bring this return up into the if. And then after this if statement, I'm just going to simply return null. All right, and now inside here, now we have access to the image URL and the author. So under the H2, I'm just going to put in a small tag and just say review by, and let's put in some strong tags, and we should now have access to the author. Okay, and then actually for this H2 though, I'm just going to take the margin away just because it pushes it down too far. So we'll say style margin bottom 0. All right, and then we also want the image So I'm going to go right under the small tag with the author and put in an image. Okay, then for the source, let's put in the image URL. For the alt, we'll put in the title dot rendered. Okay, and I'm just going to add here a style. I just want the width, I want the width to be 100% just so it doesn't go out of its container. So set width to 100%. All right, so that should give us the image. Let's save it. All right, so let's see, it's giving us the author. However, the image doesn't seem to be working. Image URL is assigned, but oh, this is in quotes. Shouldn't be in quotes. Save that. There we go. So now we have the image. All right, and we have access to pretty much any of that data that comes from the API if you want to add more here. Now, I want to have a link that goes to a single book page. So we'll have to create a route, but let's just add the link. So up here, let's bring in from React Router DOM, we'll bring in link. And let's go, let's see, let's put under the excerpt, let's put the link there. So we'll say link to, and this to is going to be dynamic. So I'm going to put in some curly braces and some backticks, and we're going to say /book/ and then we want the ID, which I'm actually going to pull from this .props.book. So we'll put in here the ID. All right, and then we'll just say book review or read review. And then I'm just going to put an HR underneath just to separate them out a little. So we're going to get an error because we're using link, however, we haven't implemented the router yet. So let's go to app.js and let's bring in, let's say import browser router as router, and we also want to bring in route from the React Router DOM, and then we're just going to surround, let's see down here, let's surround this with router. And we actually don't need a div here. I'm going to bring in fragment from React, and let's just change this right here to fragment, which is just like a ghost element. It doesn't actually show up in the DOM. And then we don't want to just place in books. We want to put in a route with an exact path to /, and then the component we want to load is going to be books. Okay, and then let's create another route. This is going to go to a component called book page, which we'll create in a minute, and it's going to go to /book/:ID. Okay, so let's bring that in, even though I haven't created it yet. So book page. Okay, so we'll save that. Obviously, we're still going to get an error, so let's go in components and create a file called bookpage.js. All right, and let's create a class. And this is we're gonna make a request to get a single book based on the parameter that's passed in. Whoa, why is that HR there? Let's go back to, oh, I forgot the angle bracket. All right, and now if you see these read reviews, it goes to book/9. And if I go to this one, hover over it, you'll see it goes to book/7. So it gives us the correct ID. So in book page, let's create a state, and book is going to be an object, and let's do is loaded set to false. All right, and then let's see, inside of component did mount, let's make our Axios call. We have to bring Axios in. So we'll import Axios. Okay, and then let's make a GET request. I'm going to put some backticks in here, and we're going to go /wp-json/wp/version2/books, and then we want the ID. Now, since the ID is in a route parameter, we can access this through the props. It's this .props.match.params, and the param we want is the ID. Okay, so that will give us the ID. And then we get our promise back. Okay, so when we get this result, we're gonna set state. So for our state, we're gonna set book to the res.data and set is loaded to true. Okay, and then down here in our render, let's first pull out from the state book and is loaded. Okay, and then we're going to check for is loaded. Okay, and let's just move this whole return right here. Go ahead and move that up here. And then after the if, I'm just going to return in H3 and say loading. Now in here, we don't actually need a div, so let's bring in a fragment from React. Okay, we'll change these to fragment. And inside the fragment, I'm going to have a link to go back, so we also need to bring in link. From React Router DOM. And let's put link to, this is just going to go to slash, and we'll just say go back. All right, and then we'll just put in HR. So it's very ugly looking, but that's fine. So HR, then let's put in H1, and I'm just going to give this, actually we'll just do an H1. And this is going to be the title. So remember, we took the book from the state. Okay, we set the state when we made the request, and that has a title property, which is an object that has rendered. Okay, so that's our H1, and then we want to set the content, so book.content.rendered. However, it has HTML in it, so we're going to do our div with the dangerously set inner HTML, _HTML, and we'll set book.content.rendered. In fact, let's do this. Let's pull from this state.book. No, we'll just leave it like that. That's fine. And then I also want the publisher. Okay, so the publisher, remember, was a custom field that we added. So under this div, right above the fragment, let's put in H4, and let's say publisher. And remember, all those custom fields are in an ACF object. So book.acf.publisher. And we could add as many custom fields as we want. So I think that should do it. Let's save that. And let's go over here and let's say read review. And there we go. So we get our title, we get our content here, and then at the bottom we have our publisher. Awesome. So, I mean, you know, this is just a simple example of how to use the API. Obviously, you could make this much more in depth, and you could add authentication. I just didn't want to make this a 2-hour video, and I didn't want to make a series. But I think that you do have the tools to be able to do that. all you have to do really is use some kind of state management, hold your authentication in that state with the token, store the token in local storage so that when you go to add a post or add a book, I should say, anything at all that you're adding or updating or deleting, you need to send along that token. Okay, so create a login page, log in, get the token, store it, and then use that to make requests to protected routes. And again, if you watch my React Django series, or at least just the front end authentication part of it, that'll pretty much show you how to do it. If you took my MERNstat course, that'll show you how to do it. And then there's, countless tutorials and articles on the internet to show you how to do that, whether it's React, Vue, Angular, or something else. All right, so hopefully this helps you guys understand a little bit how the REST API works, gives you some insight on some of the plugins that can be used. But that's it. So thanks for watching. If you like this, please leave a like. Please follow me on social media. And thanks for watching. Hey guys, one of the best, if not the best resource I can refer you to for starting a freelance business is at studywebdevelopment.com/freelancing. The creator Kyle shared it with me, and I can personally vouch that this bundle is well worth it. You get a 130-page guide to freelancing, and it comes with things like invoice templates, client proposals, HTML and CSS templates, a portfolio website, access to a private Facebook community, and much more. So use the code BRAD25 to get 25% off today.